Hey everybody, I'm here with Jasmine and she is filling out a purchase contract.
Hello.
Hey Jasmine. She's a VA buyer and I'm explaining page number 1, which actually talks about the property that she will be buying. You're buying the land, you're buying the improvements, which is basically the bricks and the ceiling. You're buying the accessories. The kitchen cabinets, all of the light fixtures, everything, the carpet, everything that's attached to the house. And you're paying a sales price. That's paragraph 3 in the contract. Paragraph 5 is the earnest money. Do you know?
You said I'm buying the sales price. Okay, I see.
That's basically what you're putting in exchange for the property. Paragraph 5 talks about the earnest money. The seller is pulling their property out of the market so that you can buy it. In exchange, you're putting your money on the line as a gesture of goodwill. So it's like a small down payment that if you decide not to buy, you might lose. Except under certain circumstances that we'll talk about that allow you to get out of the contract and recover your earnings. So number 6 is title policy. Have you heard about a title policy and what that means?
No.
So when you buy a car or when you buy a house, you get title. Theoretically, it could happen and somebody can go back to the buyer and be like, Jasmine, that is my house. They should have never sold it to you. So the way you're protected is by purchasing a title policy.
Okay.
Usually the seller, 95% of the cases, the seller pays for that title policy.
Okay.
Yeah, because they need to deliver title and they need to assure that the title can be delivered. And one way that they do that is to buy that insurance policy for you to protect you against that case. It's insurance for the title.
Okay. I see.
So this is what covers most of the contract, page number 1. And then here it just explains like the specifics, title commitment. The title company who sells you the title policy will be telling you within given certain days whether the house can be sold or not, because they do a legal research and then they sell you the title policy. There's also a survey that's needed to sell the house. Do you know what the survey is?
Mm-hmm.
It's like an architectural plan of the house and it shows the boundaries and the limitations. That way, if a neighbor encroaches into your house, you can ask them to move it because you know exactly where your house ends. That's when they come in, like an architect.
So it's like the blueprint?
Yes,
Oh,
the
okay.
blueprints of the house, but it's done by a civil engineer and a surveyor. And there's 3 options. The seller can provide you an existing survey, or you can buy an existing survey, or the seller can buy an existing survey.
So you have to have this?
Yes, you have to have it for the title company to make sure they're insuring the real property they're insuring.
Oh.
And most importantly, you need to have it for the mortgage officer because they want to make sure that they're lending money on a property that they know of.
And where do I get this from again?
Title company get it on your behalf, but you have 3 options. One is to accept the one the seller has on file. The second one is to tell the seller, oh, just buy me a new one, or I will buy a new one. All of those will affect the seller payout.
Okay.
And will make your offer either more or less attractive. Most people, Jasmine, tend to select the first one. They give them, let's say, 10, 15 days to provide an actual copy they have on file, or if they don't provide it, they make the seller pay it.
Okay.
It's like
you can do that?
Yeah. The contract allows you to do that. It's usually negotiable, but that's kind of like the accepted practice.
Okay.
You can come in and tell them, oh, just buy it from the beginning, but that kind of doesn't show goodwill.
Yeah.
But if you have a desperate seller, they'll accept it. Objections. You have 30 days or whatever amount of days you want to put in there. I usually put 30, 10, 15 to object to the purchase for whatever reason. And usually those objections are for the survey or the title policy.
And there will be no penalties if you sign and then you try to.
Usually the only thing you're risking is your earnest money. Because a seller will never penalize you more than the earnest money, they will not force you to buy the house. So earnest money is also considered liquidated damages. That's the reason people put in the earnest money. In case you decide not to buy it and you don't have a good excuse as the ones that are given on the contract to get out of the sale, then you would lose it. But there's a lot of ways that you can get out of a contract as a buyer, and I'll explain those. I know I'm talking about a lot of things, but
I'm trying to grasp it all.
we're still talking about buying a property, paying for that property, putting the down payment, and insuring your title.
Okay.
They will let you know whether it can be insured. They will need a survey. And then you can object to that survey or to whatever they tell you in the title. For example, them coming back and saying, it cannot be sold because there's an error. Oh, then I want my money back. That's what it is.
Did you know my light changes?
Then this page covers a lot of notices that mostly apply for properties that are not within city limits. For example, statutory tax districts. That's if you're outside of the city of El Paso, sometimes there's an extra tax because you're not incorporated into the city. It also gives you notices about if you're in Houston, there might be a tide that will cover your house and affect your property. So it gives you notices. If you're outside of the city limits, it tells you that eventually the city can annex your property.
So this means you can't move. So what if you wanted to get another property somewhere else?
It would be a brand new contract. No, it doesn't affect you. This only pertains to the property you're buying.
Okay.
If you were buying a property outside of the El Paso city limits, it tells you, watch out, talk to your title company, and they will always tell you because there might be an extra tax, like for pavement or for water, because they don't pay property taxes outside of city limits.
Okay.
So what we're talking about you buying a property, which is land, improvements, and accessories, for a price with a down payment, insured by a title policy that you can object to. You can object to the survey as well. That's what we're talking about. And there's some disclosures that may or may not apply to a given property.
Right there in the
An important paragraph is paragraph number 7 because it specifies the condition of the property that you will be getting. It basically says that you have the right to make an inspection on the property. And we recommend a certified licensed real estate inspector, which I will give you a list for. And they go, Jasmine, and actually inspect every single thing on the property, from the air conditioning to the outlets. And they give you a detailed report, and if an outlet doesn't work, they will show you this outlet does not work. You might want to reconsider buying the property. And then it's up to you whether you want to cancel the transaction or negotiate that the seller fix the outlet. So that's what this paragraph tells you, that all utilities will be turned on so that you can bring in a licensed inspector, tracked as their Texas Real Estate Commission.
Would do like 3.
So I'm using VA. I'm using the VA loan. That will all be free.
Usually you pay for the inspector. They can be from $300 to $500. You're not obligated to get an inspector, but you're encouraged. And normally real estate agents encourage the buyer to get an inspector for 2 reasons. The first one, we want to protect you so that you know the property is well maintained. The second of all, we want to protect ourselves, making sure that you know what condition the property is in.
So, but for VA, when you're doing a VA loan, they make it mandatory that you have to.
Oh, the appraisal. And VA appraisals are almost like an inspection, but not quite. They don't go as deep, but they're pretty exhaustive. And the reason they're really exhaustive is because it's a government-backed loan, and they protect the buyer a lot.
Okay.
And they protect the bank a lot. Because you're putting nothing as a down payment, the bank is financing 100% of your purchase, so they need to make sure that property is in perfect condition so that you don't default on the loan.
Okay.
So they protect VA people a lot. But this is an inspector that you can or cannot hire. This is voluntary. We strongly advise you do so that we can protect ourselves and we can protect you.
Okay.
So that everybody knows exactly what they're buying. you're basically accepting the property as is, but it does not mean that you cannot negotiate repairs. And the way you can negotiate repairs is by threatening to withdraw from the transaction and get your earnest money back. And what allows you to get out of the transaction and get your earnest money back within those 20, 10, or 15 days is the option to terminate. What allows you to do that, Jasmine, is paragraph 23. So we need to make sure you get an inspection before those 20 days, so you can either decide to buy it, negotiate repairs, or withdraw from it, and get your earnest money back.
Yes.